Zuria's POV. The soles of my feet made soft, hesitant sounds on the polished wood floors as I followed Maddox down the long hallway. The air was cooler here than upstairs, and the light from the tall windows had dimmed to a soft amber. My hands were clasped tightly in front of me, fingers picking nervously at the hem of my sleeve. My stomach rolled with uncertainty. I half expected to be thrown out, whipped, or at the very least screamed at again. Maddox said nothing as he led me to the living room, his broad shoulders blocking the view until we reached the entrance. When he stepped aside, I saw them, Logan seated in the large armchair, back straight, expression unreadable. Theron and Nicholas flanked him on each side, Cade leaning with his arms crossed on the back of the matching couch. Marta sat on the edge of the love seat, her hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes red-rimmed. She looked like she hadn't stopped weeping since the orphanage. I felt small the moment I stepped in. But then Marta did something I didn't expect. She rose from the love seat and crossed the room to me, her steps slow but purposeful. She stopped only a foot away from me and placed her hands on my shoulders. Her thumbs gently brushed over the bones near my collar, and when she looked into my eyes, I didn't see anger. I saw heartbreak. "You're safe here, Zuria," she said gently. "You're allowed to speak freely. No one will judge you. No one will punish you." Her words wrapped around me like a cloak, offering a warmth I didn't trust yet, but couldn't help wanting. Marta shot a firm look toward Logan, and he seemed to stiffen under her gaze. Then his sharp eyes shifted to me, serious but not hostile. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the long sofa across from him. I obeyed silently, sitting on the farthest end. My back stayed straight, my hands clutched in my lap. Logan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "How is it your wolf can't be sensed? Not even by me?" I hesitated. I learned to suppress Ileana's scent when I was 16. After my first shift. Marta's brow furrowed. "Why?" I swallowed hard. "Because if Karen or Marissa found out I had a wolf, they'd punish her too." Marta blinked slowly, her voice wavered. "Is that why? The scars on your back?" I nodded once, tight and quick. "They're from before Ileana awoke. My body couldn't heal from the beatings. The ones after she came forward healed quickly. But the old ones, they stayed." Marta looked away, a hand over her mouth as tears welled up again. I continued, my voice soft but steady. "Sometimes they locked me in the stables. For days. Told me it was where I belonged, because that's where the manure was." Nicholas sucked in a sharp breath. "I worked with the servants. Cleaned. Scrubbed. Learned how to be invisible. That was the only way to survive." Maddox, sitting to my right now, spoke next. "And your father? Why didn't he stop it?" I looked down at my lap. "He went along with whatever Karen decided. Because I'm the product of an affair he had. I was a reminder. So to appease her, he ignored me. Pretended I wasn't his." A low growl rumbled from Logan's direction. I looked up, startled, and found his jaw clenched, his gaze cold and furious. Marta gently laid her hand over mine. "Is that why you don't eat much now?" "Yes," I admitted. "I don't want to get used to the food here. Or the comfort. Or the warmth. Because I know I'm just here to repay a debt. That I'm just here to relieve balls when they become full." "No, you're not." Marta's voice thick with pain and anger. "Who told you that?" I didn't respond, but my silence was enough. Marta followed my eyes. Logan's face fell, and for the first time, I saw shame creep across it. He looked down, rubbing his palm along his jaw. His silence spoke volumes that he hadn't meant for me to hear him say that. But I had. Maddox cleared his throat. "What's your wolf's name again?" "Ileana," I said softly. There was a moment of stillness, then Cade leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "She's large," he said almost cautiously. "Your wolf is larger than most. And powerful. You crushed the headmaster's skull with your paw like it was nothing." I blinked at him. I thought all wolves were like that." Cade shook his head slowly. "They're not." I didn't know what to say to that. "I don't know why she's so strong," I added. "It's always been just us. I've never had anything to compare her to." "She's not just strong," Theron said quietly. "She moved like a warrior." Marta finally composed herself enough to speak again. "And the scars? They're all from before Ileana awakened." I nodded. I had no protection then. I was beaten regularly. Mostly by Karen. Marissa too, when she got old enough to join in. "Marissa?" Nicholas prompted gently. Was it jealousy?" I gave a bitter little laugh. "No. I think it was convenience and enjoyment. I was just there. A punching bag. A scapegoat." Cade asked quietly. "Why didn't you fight back?" I tried once, I said. When I was 12. Karen raised her hand, and I grabbed it. I told her to stop. A long breath escaped me. After a lashing, Karen locked me in my room for 6 days. No food. No water. I nearly died. If it hadn't been for one of the servants sneaking in some bread and water. I trailed off, eyes clouding with the memory. I never fought back again after that. No one spoke. The silence was thick and tense. Heavy with anger that wasn't mine. Logan's voice broke the quiet. What happened to your mother? I glanced up. She died when I was 3. I don't remember her much. Just the smell of cocoa butter. That's why I still use it. Marta let out a choked sob. She was an omega in my father's pack house. That's all I know. Karen never let her name be mentioned. One of the older servants told me it was Naima. Everyone sat still, solemn. Then I stood and knelt on the ground. I'm willing to accept punishment for what I did today. For killing that man. I only ask that you don't send me back. I can sleep in the stables again, clean, serve, just don't send me back. Logan looked at me sharply. Why would you think I'd send you back? Because. I hesitated. Because I wasn't the one you wanted. You were meant to take Marissa. And she'd make a better Luna. I know that. You're here now, Logan said, voice low. And you're part of this pack. I couldn't read his tone. I'm not Luna material, I murmured. Maybe. Maybe not, he said honestly. But you're not going to be treated like a servant. I felt the burn of tears again, but didn't let them fall. My chest ached with unfamiliar pressure. I didn't know what to call it, shame, relief, sorrow, or all three. I sat back down on the sofa. Marta reached over and took my hand again. I'll make sure you never feel like a servant again, she said quietly. And for the first time, I believed her. Moonlight spilled in through the wide bedroom window, painting soft silvery streaks across the floor and the edge of the bed. I lay curled on top of the thick, down-filled comforter, my arms hugging a spare pillow to my chest. The plush linens beneath me still smelled faintly of cocoa butter, of my own skin, of safety. But my chest felt tight, too tight for sleep. Everything from the meeting downstairs looped in my mind like a haunting melody that wouldn't stop playing. Logan had said I wouldn't be sent back, that I belonged to Shadowfang now. Whether by payment or marriage, he had said, but the words that followed after that felt like the first honest mercy I'd ever been given. Not a kindness exactly, but a step away from cruelty. And Marta had looked at me like a mother would. Not with pity, but with protectiveness. With fire in her eyes and sorrow in her voice. Marta had cried for me. A tear for every lash on my back, for every hour I spent locked away. Every silent scream I buried deep inside just to survive. My fingers gripped the pillow tighter. Why do I feel like I can't breathe, Ileana? Ileana stirred inside slowly, like a comforting stretch of muscle, and thought wrapping itself around my soul. Because for the first time in our life, someone cares for us. I closed her eyes, burying my face into the soft cotton. They were all quiet after I told them everything. Even Logan. Especially Logan. Ileana huffed quietly in my mind, a sound like a soft growl laced with contemplation. He was ashamed. You felt it too, didn't you? I nodded against the pillow. He didn't deny it. When Marta asked who made me believe I was just here to satisfy his urges, he didn't even try to speak. Just kept his head down. My voice was hushed, as though speaking too loud would break the fragile calm in the room. I overheard him say it that first day. In his office. Like I wasn't even a person. Just a body. And now? Ileana asked, her voice sharper now, protective. I don't know, I whispered. He still scares me. But he didn't yell. He didn't raise his voice or humiliate me in front of the others. He listened. They all did. They were horrified, she said with a tiny scoff. I don't think they had any idea what kind of hell we came from. And now they do. Ileana's presence pressed closer. We don't have to hide you anymore. They know about us. About you. And that worries me. A long pause filled the silence between us. Everything is different now. They know I'm not wolfless. What does that make me? Logan was so sure I was useless before. Now what am I? You are power, Ileana whispered. You are ours. You are truth and fury and strength wrapped in softness they don't yet understand. You protected that child today without hesitation. You fought. You killed for someone weaker. That's what a Luna does. I scoffed aloud this time. I'm not a Luna. I'm not even a. I'm nothing like Marissa. You're not meant to be like her, Ileana said firmly. You're meant to be you. They'll see it. They already have. I thought about the little boy again, the way his tiny body trembled in my arms, the smell of blood and old fear clinging to him. I thought about the other children watching me, eyes wide, clothes tattered, afraid to speak unless spoken to. "Tomorrow," she murmured, "we go back to the orphanage." I nodded against the pillow. "Yes, even if it means I scrub every wall and floorboard myself. They deserve better." Ileana was quiet for a while, as if processing everything. Then she asked softly, "So the thing Cade said about me." Zuria frowned. "What do you mean?" "He said I was large, strong, different." Zuria blinked up at the ceiling. "I don't know what that means. It means we're not like them. Not just a regular she-wolf. I don't know what we are yet, but something inside them knows it too. They just can't put it into words." That revelation sent a strange chill down my spine. I slowly sat up in bed, pulling my knees to my chest. "I'm proud of you, Zuria. Of what you did today. You showed them who you are. You didn't ask for permission to protect that boy. You just did it." I felt a lump form in my throat. Pride. Silence wrapped around me like a blanket, comforting and still. But inside me, Ileana was awake, more alive than she'd ever been. And for once, we weren't hiding. Logan, POV, the house was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that brought peace, but the heavy, suffocating kind that pressed in on the walls, the ceiling, his chest. I sat in my room, elbows resting on my knees, hands laced together, eyes trained on the floor. I hadn't moved in hours. The faint glow of the moon cast long shadows across the polished wood and cool gray walls of the space. Outside, the distant hum of crickets was the only sound to compete with the relentless storm churning in my head. Zuria's voice still echoed inside me. I was told I was manure and deserved to be where manure is kept. I didn't eat much because I didn't want to get used to being treated like I belonged. I'm just a form of repayment. Each confession had been a slow, crushing blow. Not because she'd wept or begged or dramatized anything. No, she had delivered her truth plainly, quietly, like someone so used to cruelty they no longer expected anything else. And that made it so much worse. My jaw clenched. Hard that I once thought she was weak. Defective. Worthless. Jackson growled low in my mind all day. "Hard-headed idiot," the beast muttered, pacing inside my head. "Didn't I tell you something was off? That she was hiding something?" I rubbed my hand down my face, exhaling roughly. "Yes, you did," I admitted aloud, voice low and hoarse. "I didn't listen. I saw what I wanted to see. You saw defeat. You saw disappointment. You saw that Darian didn't give you Marissa, and you let your pride blind you to what stood in front of you." "I thought she was nothing," I whispered, the words like rusted nails in my mouth. "And I was wrong." Jackson rumbled again, less angry now, more thoughtful. "She's powerful, Logan. You heard what they said about her wolf." I nodded slowly. The image of Zuria's wolf charging, smashing that bastard Bartholomew like he was made of paper, filled his head again. That wasn't a typical she-wolf. "She's not normal," I said quietly. "No, and she's not meant to be. She killed to protect. That's not something you teach. That's something you're born with. She would make a great Luna. She protects without hesitation." I pushed my back deeper into the cushions of the chair, arms resting on the carved armrests as I stared at the fireplace across the room. "I need to know more," I muttered. "Where did she come from? Who was her mother really? An Omega, sure, but that wolf. That kind of power doesn't just come from a weak bloodline." I made a mental note to speak with Maddox tomorrow. I need Maddox to get to the bottom of it, dig into her past, look into her mother's lineage, and uncover the roots of Zuria's abilities. There were bound to be deeper skeletons to uncover. And now that Zuria wasn't hiding her wolf anymore, things had changed. "She was protecting her wolf," I murmured, eyes tightening with something dangerously close to guilt. "She lived in fear that if anyone found out about Ileana, they'd hurt her. Just like they hurt Zuria." My fists clenched at the thought. What kind of woman beats a child bloody just for being born? What kind of man watches it happen and calls himself a father? "You were ready to use her too," Jackson reminded me coldly. I closed his eyes. That guilt didn't slip away. It lingered. "I can't change what I thought," I said softly. "But I can change what I do next." Jackson was silent for a moment before replying. "Then do it. Mark her. Make her our Luna." I stood up abruptly, pacing toward the window. The moon had risen higher now, casting a pale wash across the sprawling land of the Shadow Fang pack. My territory.my home. She didn't see it as hers yet. But maybe, just maybe, I could change that too. One step at a time. I placed my palm on the glass and stared out into the forest where she'd fought like hell for a child who wasn't even hers. The same forest where she once considered hiding her wolf for the rest of her life. The weight of that truth crushed my chest. She should have never had to hide who she was. Jackson growled in agreement. Then don't ever make her feel like she has to again. Chapter: Zuria's POV. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the hallway as I followed Mira quietly, with my bare feet brushing across the cool marble. I wore a soft blue dress the Alara had laid out for me the night before, clean, comfortable, and far nicer than anything I'd ever been allowed to wear in my old pack. Still, I couldn't enjoy it. My hands were clutched together in front of me, fingers interlocked and tense. Mira smiled as we reached the dining room door. Just sit and eat, Miss Zuria. Breakfast will be served momentarily. Relax. Easy for her to say. I stepped inside and instantly froze. The long table was already partially set, polished wood gleaming under the soft chandeliers above. Silver utensils, crystal glasses. Linen napkins folded into neat triangles. I felt like I'd wandered into a royal banquet. Every instinct told me I didn't belong here. Still, Mira motioned toward one of the chairs near the end of the table, and with a slight bow of her head, I obeyed. I sat at the far end, closest to the kitchen doors and farthest from the Alpha's chair. My heart thumped nervously as I adjusted myself in the chair, my back straight, hands clutched together in my lap, and fingers forming small fists against my thighs. Then I heard them. Boots against hardwood. Heavy footfalls. The low rumble of male voices descending the stairs. My pulse picked up instantly. The brothers entered first, loud and laughing about something, followed by Maddox and Logan. The moment he stepped into the room, I felt it. His presence was a storm, heavy, suffocating, undeniable. I tried to keep my eyes down, but something in my chest forced my gaze upward. Our eyes met. His dark, hooded stare caught mine, and my breath hitched in my throat. For a heartbeat, I couldn't move. Then the moment passed. Panic fluttered in my chest. I immediately looked down again, lowering my eyes to my fists. I began to rise from the table. I wasn't sure if I should just eat later, in my room, away from their gazes. Zuria, Maddox said casually, taking a seat close to me. Sit down. Breakfast is about to be served. My spine straightened, my body froze halfway up. Slowly, I lowered myself back into the chair. A moment later, the double doors to the kitchen swung open, and 4 Omegas came out carrying silver trays and covered dishes. The scent hit me like a tidal wave, rich, buttery, sweet, savory, all at once. My stomach tightened painfully. The trays were uncovered in front of my eyes. Waffles stacked high, glistening with steam. Fluffy pancakes, crisp bacon, sausages, hash browns. Bowls of fresh fruit. Carafes of orange juice, apple juice, herbal tea, and coffee. My eyes widened. I've never seen so much food at once in my life. My mouth watered instantly. The brothers dove in first. Theron immediately snatched 3 waffles and bit into one like it was a competition. Nicholas made a plate full of sausage and hash browns, while Cade poured orange juice and teased Maddox about his boring pancake stack. Logan, across the table from me, remained quiet as he filled his plate. I sat still, unsure of what I was allowed to do. Maddox looked up at me. Zuria, you better eat something before these animals clear the table. Looking down. I don't know what I should eat. What do you mean? Theron asked through a mouthful of waffle, eyebrows raised. I've never eaten any of this before, I admitted softly. I don't know what it tastes like. Theron looked like I'd grown a second head. Wait, you've never had pancakes? Or waffles? I shook my head, almost ashamed. Nicholas leaned forward, his tone suddenly gentle. Then take a little of everything. Find out what you like. Encouraged by his tone, I reached for the serving utensils and began putting small portions on the plate. A single strip of bacon, 1 single pancake, a spoonful of hash browns. I mimicked Maddox's movements, watching as he poured syrup over his pancakes, cut a piece, and took a bite. Carefully, I cut into the pancake, lifted the fork to my lips, and took a bite. The world disappeared. My eyes fluttered shut. Warmth, sweetness, butter, syrup, all melted together in my mouth like magic. A sound escaped my lips before I could stop it. MMM. The moan was soft, barely audible. But not soft enough. I licked my lips. Eyes still closed, I chewed slowly, savoring it. Then it happened again. MMM, sighing softer this time. Silence fell around the table like a slap. When I opened my eyes, I was still dazed by how delicious the food was, and immediately froze when I realized everyone was staring at me. All 5 men. Cade paused mid-bite, stunned. Nicholas coughed into his glass. Theron's jaw had dropped, waffle forgotten. Maddox was staring at Logan. And Logan, Logan's eyes were locked on me. Intense. Dark. Glinting with something that made my pulse race like fire and hunger mixed together. His lips were parted slightly, his stare fixed as if I'd just cast a spell on him. The tips of his ears were turning red. My cheeks flushed deeply, realizing what had just happened. I lowered my eyes and bowed my head, too ashamed to look up again. I focused on cutting my food quietly, cheeks burning. Through the mind link, Maddox muttered with a smirk. If she moans like that for pancakes, I'd hate to hear her in bed. Logan's jaw clenched, and he shot Maddox a glare sharp enough to sever bone. Maddox snorted into his coffee. Cade chuckled low in his throat. I kept eating, pretending I hadn't heard or felt their gazes on me. The tension at the table dissolved into casual conversation after that, but Logan never took his eyes off me. Even as he cut his food and ate mechanically, his gaze would drift to my mouth, my fingers, my subtle expressions as I sampled each new item like it was a miracle. And it was, for me, every bite was a quiet revelation. By the end of the meal, I'd tried everything on my plate. It was the most delicious food I'd ever eaten. Still, as the meal wrapped up, I felt a familiar pull in my chest. The pull of uncertainty. The urge to disappear before my presence took up too much space. As the Omegas began clearing dishes, I stood silently and bowed my head toward the table. "Thank you for the meal," I said softly, turning to go. But Logan's voice stopped me mid-step. "Zuria." I turned to look over my shoulder, hesitant. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me unreadable. Finally, he said, "You'll be accompanying us this afternoon. Maddox will fill you in." I blinked, startled. "Yes, Alpha." I turned quickly and walked out to the living room, heart pounding. Every step felt heavy, because behind me, Logan was still watching. Ileana was howling in my head. "He's noticing us," Ileana whispered. "And he can't look away." After breakfast, my stomach felt warm and full, a sensation I was still getting used to. The dining table had been cleared by the Omegas, and the brothers left one by one, talking about patrols or sparring. Logan disappeared without a word, but I'd felt his gaze on me before he left. It lingered, seared, left me confused and flushed. Mira gently touched my elbow. "Do you want to visit the orphanage today?" I nodded that I hadn't stopped thinking about the children since yesterday. The boy, Luca, his wound. After freshening up, I stepped into the morning sun. The click of my shoes against the path was the only sound I made. The air was crisp, the wind kind. But what awaited me stopped me in my tracks. The orphanage no longer looked like the haunted, broken place I had seen yesterday. Workers buzzed around, sanding and painting, hammering new boards into place. The porch had been replaced, cracks filled in. Fresh paint brightened once faded walls. The entire building breathed with new life. Inside, the scent of soap and freshly baked bread filled the air. I saw Omegas cleaning, stacking dishes from breakfast, and children sitting around smiling and laughing. There were new toys, music playing softly from somewhere. My throat tightened. Maybe the Alpha isn't so bad. This means something, Ileana said gently. I didn't answer her, I didn't know how. I walked to one of the Omegas with a hesitant smile. "Can I help with the cleaning?" The Omega blinked at me, surprised, then gave me a kind chuckle. "Thank you, ma'am, but it's under control. We've got this." A twinge of disappointment nestled in my chest. I didn't want to stand around. I wanted to do something. "Do you know where the little boy is, the one who was hurt?" "Luca." Another Omega stepped forward. "I'll show you, Miss Zuria." We walked down a hallway filled with color, drawings, cheerful paint, clean walls. Beds lined a quiet room. Stripped of all linens. Why no bedding? Hung outside to dry. "By tonight, every child will have a fresh blanket and pillow," the Omega said with pride. I smiled. It was real. Change was happening. Then I saw him. Luca lay on a bed near the window, the physician crouched beside him, tending to the wound across his small back. His little face lit up when he saw me. "Miss Zuria." He tried to leap off the bed, but the physician gently eased him back down. The doctor nodded to me. "His wound is healing well. With these herbs, he'll barely scar." Relief surged through me. "Thank you." "Of course, Luna," he said. I froze. "I'm not the Luna." He just smiled, packed up his things, and left me there confused. I sat beside Luca, who immediately started chattering about breakfast. We had pancakes, and eggs, and orange juice, and Miss Olivia gave us jam. His joy was infectious. I sat with him for a few more hours, until his words slowed and his eyes fluttered shut. He drifted off peacefully. As I stood to leave, I heard footsteps. An Omega greeted someone behind me. Logan. He paused when he saw me. I quickly raised a finger to my lips and pointed to the sleeping boy. Logan nodded and waited silently as I moved toward him. We walked out together, saying nothing for a few steps. The sun was higher now, warm on my skin. "Thank you," I said. He glanced at me. "For what?" "For this. For them. The repairs, the meals. You move quickly." He exhaled. "I should have done it long ago. I assumed the headmaster was taking care of things. I was wrong." I hesitated. "May I ask something?" He nodded. "Could I attend classes with the children?" He blinked. "Classes? Why?" I looked down. I never learned how to properly read or write. When Marissa went to school, I was left at home. Some servants tried to teach me, but I was always too busy working or being punished. His voice dropped to a hush. "You're illiterate?" I nodded. His jaw clenched. "You won't be learning with the children." My stomach dropped. "I understand." "No," he said quickly. "I'll hire a private tutor. You'll learn at the Alpha House." "That's not necessary," I whispered. "It is. It wouldn't be right for you to learn alongside the children." I nodded slowly. "Okay." We walked again in silence. Pack members we passed nodded or smiled. Some even bowed. It was strange, being seen. We arrived at a wide, open field where recruits trained in dirt rings and on dummies. I watched, fascinated, as wolves shifted mid-run, as punches landed with precision. Logan stood beside me. The training ground. Some of these are orphans who chose to stay. Others are born into the pack. I couldn't tear my eyes away. "Maybe one day," Ileana whispered, "we could train. We could protect ourselves. No one would ever hurt us again." I didn't respond, but I stood there longer than I needed to, just watching, imagining what a future might look like where I didn't have to flinch. Where I could be strong, where I could be free. Logan's POV. I stood at the edge of the training field long after Zuria had returned to the Alpha House. The rhythmic thuds of fists against dummies and the sharp commands of trainers echoed around me, but I barely registered any of it. My thoughts were still back at the orphanage, in that quiet hallway where I'd seen her with the boy. Luca. The way he looked at her like she was his entire world. The way she tucked his blanket around him and held a finger to her lips to silence me. Like she had always been part of this place. Part of us.it unnerved me. It moved me. She hadn't even flinched when I approached. She didn't cower or tremble like she had in the beginning. There was this calm in her now, like the moment had purpose, like she knew she belonged there. And damn it, she looked right at home. Maybe everyone saw something I refused to see. Maybe she is Luna material, regardless if she had a wolf or not. I turned and walked slowly back to the Alpha House, each step heavier than the last. The moment I entered my office, I sank into the chair near the fireplace. I hadn't lit it. The air was still warm from the day, but the cold inside me needed burning out. Marta's words still haunted me. "You treat her like she's a prisoner. Like she's nothing." And now I'd seen the scars on Luca's back and realized what kind of hell I'd left those children in. That Zuria had to be the one to do what I should have done a long time ago. Jackson stirred in the back of my mind. "You were wrong about her," Jackson said. "I know," I muttered aloud. "But she was supposed to be payment. A symbol. That's all. She's not wolfless. I know that now too." "You knew before," he said, almost accusing. "You just didn't want to believe it. I told you her scent was odd. Hidden. She's not normal and you knew it. You ignored me." I gritted my teeth. I didn't want her. I wanted what was owed. The loan. The other daughter. And now, I rubbed a hand down my face that I didn't have an answer. Because now all I could think about was the look in her eyes when she talked to that boy. The warmth. The strength. The way she carried herself even after shifting in front of an entire crowd and killing a man. No, not a man. A monster. Headmaster Bartholomew Greaves. That bastard that I'd put him in charge of our most vulnerable, and I hadn't looked back. I assumed he had it handled, that I was too focused on the pack's borders, politics, keeping everything looking pristine on the surface. And all the while, children were being starved and whipped under my nose. What kind of alpha lets that happen? "The kind too blinded by pride to listen to his wolf," came the reply. I growled low in my throat, angry at myself more than anything. I should have seen the signs. Zuria. I couldn't stop thinking about the things she'd said. About being locked in the stables. Beaten, starved, denied schooling. Her voice had cracked when she said her mother died when she was 3. That she never even got to say her name aloud. And then she'd said she expected to be punished. She was ready to suffer, my wolf, Jackson whispered. For protecting a child. I stood abruptly, pacing. No. This couldn't go on. She needed safety. She needed protection. But more than that, she needed to understand she is more than just a piece of property or a debt repaid. I didn't know if she could ever see herself as more than what Karen and Marissa made her believe she was. But maybe I could. I stopped at the window, staring out to the grounds. Tomorrow, I would have Maddox dig into her background. Her lineage, her wolf, Ileana. The next morning, as I entered my office, I waved Maddox in, who had been lingering like he knew I was about to summon him. Close the door, I said. I leaned against the edge of my desk, arms crossed. We need to hire a tutor. A private one. For Zuria. Maddox's brow furrowed. A tutor. She can't read or write, I said flatly. Maddox blinked, stunned. You're serious? I nodded. Apparently, she was never allowed to go to school. His jaw clenched, anger flickering in his eyes. I'll handle it. Good. I straightened and walked to the window. And there's more. I need you to go to Alpha Darian's pack. Find out everything you can about Zuria, her past, her mother. The truth, not whatever crap Darian peddles. Maddox's eyes lit with something darker. You want me to ask nicely or? Take the brothers. And as many warriors as you need. A slow smile spread across his face. And Karen. I met his gaze. Make her feel what Zuria felt. Every ounce of pain she inflicted. Maddox's grin sharpened into something cold and savage. It'll be my pleasure. Don't start a war, I warned. But send a message. One they won't forget. Understood. He turned to leave. When the door clicked shut, I dropped into my chair, resting my forehead against steepled fingers. Jackson stirred again. Good idea in making sure Karen gets a taste of her own medicine, Jackson murmured. Maddox's POV. I found the brothers exactly where I expected, outside near the training pit, finishing off their morning spar. Nicholas had Theron in a headlock while Cade looked on, laughing as if he didn't have a care in the world. But the moment I called out, their attention snapped to me. We have an assignment, I said, crossing my arms. Theron let go of Nicholas with a wicked grin already forming. Finally. Been too quiet around here. Cade raised a brow. What kind of assignment? We're going to Alpha Darian's pack, I said. Logan wants answers about Zuria, her past and her mother. And for good measure. He wants Karen to suffer. Theron's grin deepened into something feral. We get to pay that bitch a visit. Nicholas cracked his knuckles. About damn time. Cade just smiled coldly. I can't wait. The three of them were known across the region, not just as enforcers, but as brutal, calculated warriors who showed no mercy. They didn't just win battles, they decimated enemies. Entire enemy units would surrender at the mere mention of the brothers from Shadowfang Pack. Stories circulated about what they'd done in the last border war, Nicholas ripping a traitor's throat out with his bare hands, Theron nailing an enemy alpha's palms to a wooden post and carving the pack insignia into his chest, Cade casually dragging a whip coated in wolfsbane across a prisoner's back until he passed out from the agony. To most, their names evoked dread. A whispered warning in the dark. To be summoned by the brothers was a death sentence. The next morning, we set out before the sun rose. A fleet of sleek black SUVs pulled out of the Shadowfang compound, slicing through the early morning fog like a blade through flesh. 50 of our best warriors followed, split across the convoy, each one handpicked for this mission. It wasn't just a fact-finding trip anymore. It was a statement. The ride was long, the landscape shifting from dense forest to vast plains as the hours dragged on. The inside of the vehicle was tense with anticipation. No one spoke much, and no one had to. We were all thinking the same thing. Justice, retribution. I glanced at Theron in the rearview mirror. He was sharpening one of his knives, a look of serene menace on his face. What are you going to do to Karen when we get there? Cade asked casually from the front passenger seat. Theron didn't look up. Haven't decided yet. Depends on how she screams. Nicholas chuckled darkly. She'll scream. They always do. The brothers didn't take pleasure in random violence. No, what made them feared was the precision of their cruelty. Every strike, every blow was deliberate. Calculated. When you were on their list, they didn't kill you quickly. They dismantled you piece by piece, mind and body. But beneath the bloodlust, I could see it in all their eyes, fury. For what Zuria had suffered. For what she had been denied. We weren't just delivering a message, we were carrying the weight of her pain with us. And we intended to make sure those responsible felt every ounce of it. This wasn't just about a girl anymore. This was about justice for someone who had been discarded, brutalized, silenced. We had another full day ahead of us before we reached Darian's territory. Zuria's POV: I was lying in bed when the low roar of engines echoed across the gravel road. I sat up slowly, squinting through the soft rays of morning sun seeping through the curtains. Ileana stirred within me, her voice soft but curious. "Where are they going so early?" she asked. I pressed a palm to the window, watching the long line of black SUVs disappear beyond the treeline. "I don't know," I whispered. "But that was a lot of vehicles." Ileana was quiet for a moment. "It's probably nothing." Still, a strange unease prickled in my chest. I didn't know it was Maddox and the brothers setting out for my old pack. I had no idea what Logan had commanded. I only knew that the house had suddenly fallen into silence. I laid back against my pillows, trying to reclaim sleep, but the restless ache in my limbs wouldn't let me. After a few minutes, I sighed. "Want to go for a run?" I asked Ileana. Ileana immediately perked up, practically bouncing in my mind. "Finally! Yes! Yes, yes, yes!" A laugh escaped me, light and quiet. I slipped out of bed and shed my nightgown, wrapping a robe loosely over my arm. It was early enough, surely no one would be up. I didn't see the harm in walking to the back in trance like this. The robe was for after the run anyway. Padding softly into the hallway, I rounded the corner at the staircase and collided hard into a warm, solid wall of muscle. "Logan!" I gasped, frozen in place. His eyes raked over me with a slow, unreadable intensity. My bare skin prickled under his gaze. His voice was gravel and shadow. "Why are you tiptoeing around the house naked?" I scrambled to find words. I was going to take Ileana for a run. I thought no one would be awake." He gave a short nod. "Then I'll come with you." My heart stuttered. "You? What?" He didn't answer, he just started walking down the stairs. Ileana giggled in my mind. "He's coming with us." Oh moon goddess, I didn't expect this. I followed him, clutching the robe over my chest. Logan reached the front door, stripped without a hint of shame, and tossed his clothes aside. I tried not to look, but I still caught the sight of his sculpted torso and the tattoos that trailed across his abdomen. Logan smirked. "Might want to use your eyes, Zuria, before you walk into another door." It was too late. Still staring at the ceiling, I stepped into the frame of the open door and smacked my chin against the wood. I winced, rubbing the tender spot. Logan chuckled low in his throat. "See?" I looked at him, then really looked, and it was impossible not to admire the powerful cut of his form, the sheer command that rolled off his frame. I kept my eyes locked above the waist. Outside, the air was crisp and dewy. The forest called to me. "Shift," Logan said. I closed my eyes, let Ileana rise forward. The shift was seamless. My bones stretched, fur exploded across my limbs, and in seconds I stood as Ileana, proud, tall, and glowing under the waning moonlight. From Logan's mind, I heard a low, surprised hum. His wolf emerged a moment later, massive and black with streaks of silver along his shoulders. His name floated to me, Jackson. "She's stunning," Jackson growled in Logan's mind. "She's not just powerful. She's majestic." Logan grunted internally. "She's not what I expected." Jackson purred, watching Ileana with open admiration. "You saw her naked first. Now I get to admire her like this. Fair's fair." Logan rolled his mental eyes. "Get your tongue off the forest floor, mutt." Jackson gave a wolfish grin. "You're the one who can't stop thinking about her. Don't pin this on me." Ileana darted forward into the trees, thrilled to finally run. Jackson followed. The earth blurred beneath us as we dashed between trees, over logs and moss-covered rocks. Our paws struck the ground with the rhythm of thunder, and every movement was fluid, fast, free. I hadn't run like this in so long. I'd nearly forgotten what it felt like, wind whispering past my ears, earth beneath my claws. I laughed into the forest, Ileana's joy becoming my own. Eventually, the trees broke open into a wide clearing. At the edge of the field, the land dropped away into a rocky cliff, and there before us stretched something I'd never seen, the ocean. Ileana skidded to a stop, her breaths deep and rapid. The vast blue water sparkled under the morning sun, waves crashing softly against the rocks far below. She padded forward until her paws brushed the edge. Then she sat, gazing out. Jackson appeared beside her, his fur brushing against hers. He sat without a word. Inside my mind, Ileana spoke softly. "He's not what we thought." I hesitated. "He's dangerous." "So are we." I didn't respond, not yet. For a long time, the two wolves sat together, bathed in morning light, watching the waves roll in. Not enemies, not lovers, just two wild things side by side. And somehow, for a brief moment, it felt Right. Zuria's POV. Ileana and Jackson strolled back through the forest, their paws crunching the leaves and underbrush beneath them. The golden hue of dawn filtered between the trees, casting dappled shadows along the path. I could feel Ileana's contentment radiating within me, a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. There was something freeing about running, not from anything, but simply for the joy of it. We approached the Alpha House, paws slowing in tandem. At the doorway, Ileana and Jackson shifted back into our human forms. Logan stood tall beside me, his eyes already on mine. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. He reached out silently and helped me slip on my robe, his touch gentle, almost reverent. We didn't speak, but we didn't need to. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, mutual. We ascended the stairs side by side. When we reached my bedroom door, Logan paused. "I enjoyed the run this morning," he said, his voice tender and softer than I'd ever heard it. I blushed. "Me too. It was nice." A small smile tugged at his lips. "We should do it again sometime. Next time I'll wait until you start running before I strip." My blush deepened, and I ducked my head with a nervous laugh. Noted. In my mind, Ileana was nearly howling with laughter. "Tell him next time you'll race him, and win." I ignored her, but I could feel her smugness. Logan lingered for another breath before nodding and walking toward his own room. In his bedroom, Logan sat on the edge of the bed, sweat still clinging to his skin. Jackson stirred in the back of his mind. "You should have kissed her," Jackson grumbled. Logan blinked. "Excuse me. The opportunity was there. You should have kissed her." Logan sighed and pushed off the bed, walking into the bathroom. The water cascaded over him in the shower, but it did nothing to cool his mind or his growing arousal. He groaned when he realized the thought of her, Zuria, standing bare in front of him, the moonlight caressing her curves, was what had caused him to stiffen. "Not now," he muttered, trying to focus on anything else. But Jackson wasn't helping. "She's got the kind of body you remember in dreams. Did you see her legs? The soft skin? The curve of her?" "Shut up," Logan snapped aloud. Jackson just chuckled. Logan leaned both palms against the shower wall. "This isn't good. I can't be thinking about her like this." "Too late," Jackson hummed. Eventually, Logan dried off, dressed quickly, and stood before the mirror, adjusting the buttons of his shirt. His thoughts drifted back to Zuria. Her eyes, her strength. He couldn't stop himself from wanting to see her again. He grabbed his watch, slipped it onto his wrist, and made his way downstairs, already wondering if she'd smile at him again. Logan's POV. Logan was in the dining room, already seated at the head of the long wooden table as he absently stirred a cup of black coffee. The soft clinking of the spoon echoed in the otherwise quiet room. The smell of breakfast drifted in from the kitchen, savory sausages, sizzling bacon, cinnamon-dusted pancakes. But none of it compared to the anticipation building in his chest. He was waiting for her. Jackson yawned lazily in the back of his mind, then perked up as footsteps padded softly across the polished floors. "She's coming," his wolf said with an eagerness that Logan tried to ignore. Zuria entered the room, wearing a pale lavender dress that brushed her knees. Her curls were loosely tied back, and her golden-brown skin glowed under the soft morning light filtering through the windows. Logan's gaze followed her until she sat at the far end of the table. She glanced his way briefly, then quickly looked down, her fingers fidgeting nervously. Logan cleared his throat. "Good morning." "Again." "Good morning, Alpha," she responded, her voice soft. "Logan," he corrected. She peeked up at him, her expression uncertain. Before the moment could stretch into awkwardness, Mira and a few Omegas appeared from the kitchen, carrying platters and bowls of food. They began to place them across the table, fluffy scrambled eggs, crisp hash browns, golden waffles topped with butter, bowls of fresh fruit, sausages, and 3 different types of juices. Zuria's eyes widened. Jackson purred. "There it is. That smile." Her lips parted, barely hiding her astonishment. "You should eat," Logan encouraged. "Especially after that run, you need to refuel." She nodded and began filling her plate, though still somewhat timidly. They ate in silence for a few moments until Zuria finally looked up, curiosity etched on her face. "Where are Maddox and the others?" "I haven't seen them this morning." Logan's hand stilled on his fork. He didn't want to lie, but he also didn't want her to know, not just yet. "They're out on an assignment," he said casually. "They'll be gone for a few days." Her brow furrowed slightly, and for a second it looked like she might ask more, but then Logan quickly added, "Your tutor will be arriving today." Her eyes lit up with pure delight. Logan felt something in his chest shift. Really? He nodded. Maddox arranged for one of the pack's recently graduated teachers to work with you. Her smile bloomed, wide and radiant. Jackson practically sighed. There it is again. That smile. It's beautiful. Thank you, Logan, she said. Truly. I didn't expect this. Any of it. He nodded, unsure what to say without revealing too much. He wanted her to smile more. Wanted to see her laugh, speak freely, exist without fear. He reached for his juice and took a long drink, if only to distract himself from the fact that he was starting to like the sound of her voice in his home every morning. She glanced up again, meeting his eyes this time. He smiled. She smiled back. And Jackson whispered in the back of his mind, "So when are we going to claim her? Mark her." Zuria's POV. I sat in my bedroom's sunlit window nook, my knees tucked beneath me, flipping through an empty notebook Logan had given me after breakfast. I still couldn't believe it, my very own notebook. Blank pages ready for learning, not punishment. Not chores, not orders. Mira had told me the tutor would be arriving shortly, and though I was nervous, I was also excited. My heart thudded softly in my chest as I tried to imagine what it would be like to actually learn, to read, to write, to understand the things that had always been withheld from me. I heard the heavy footsteps before I saw them. Logan's voice echoed faintly from down the hallway as the front door creaked open. "Bring him to my office." Him? My eyebrows lifted slightly that I didn't know the tutor would be a man. Mira appeared moments later in the library doorway. "Zuria, come with me. The tutor has arrived." I gathered my notebook and followed her through the hallway and up the stairs. My hands were clammy that I couldn't stop wondering if I'd embarrass myself, or worse, fail to learn at all. Mira gave me a reassuring smile before opening the Alpha's office door. Logan stood behind his desk, arms crossed, jaw tight. The tension in the room was thick. When we entered, Mira stepped aside. "Alpha Zuria, this is Elias Wren." The man who walked in was young, maybe close to my age. Broad-shouldered but lean, with golden brown hair, a clean-shaven jaw and kind blue eyes. His aura was calm, professional, but undeniably attractive. Something stirred beside me. Logan, his jaw clenched. A low growl vibrated in the air. "Jackson, Logan's wolf. What the hell is this? Amale tutor. You're leaving our mate alone with him?" I glanced at Logan, surprised by the sudden shift in his energy. He looked as though he was barely holding something back. The tutor, Elias, offered a respectful bow. "Alpha Logan. It's an honor." Logan didn't respond at first. Then, slowly, his eyes flicked toward Elias' outstretched hand, and then toward me. I smiled at Elias. "I'm excited to learn. I've been waiting for this." The sound that rumbled from Logan's chest wasn't subtle. A growl. Elias blinked, confused. He bowed his head immediately and tilted his neck slightly in submission. I frowned. "Logan, you two can go to the library," Logan said tightly, refusing to look at me. "Begin your studies." Jackson snarled inside Logan's mind. "We're sending her off with that. That smug, educated flirt? He'll sit beside her for hours. Watch her smile. Hear her laugh." "That's enough," Logan snapped at him mentally. "You don't listen," Jackson growled. "If we lose her to that boyish scholar, I'll remind you every damn day." I followed Elias and Mira back down the stairs, my notebook pressed tightly to my chest. I wasn't sure what had just happened upstairs, but I felt Logan's unease like a storm cloud. When we entered the library, my eyes widened. Seeing it for the first time, with its shelves towering like ancient trees and its scent of parchment and wood, made it feel even more magical. "This is incredible," I whispered. Elias smiled. "It's one of the oldest libraries in the region. The Alpha's family has curated it for generations." I ran my fingers gently across the carved edge of the table. I had never been in a library before. Elias pulled out a beginner's reader book and slid it toward me. "Let's start with your name. I'll show you how to spell it." He wrote my name slowly in large block letters, Zuria. I stared at it. Z-U-R-I-I, I repeated slowly. My heart swelled that I was learning. Meanwhile, in his office, Logan paced behind his desk. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. Jackson's snarl echoed again. "You're jealous. Admit it." Logan rubbed a hand over his face. "Of course I'm jealous. He's young, smart, charming, and they'll be alone, together, for hours." "Exactly," Jackson said. "And you just handed her over to him." Logan sat down, fists clenched. He couldn't deny it. Seeing her smile at Elias had twisted something inside him. He didn't want her afraid that he didn't want to cage her. But the thought of another man teaching her, sitting across from her, hearing her laugh, watching the light in her eyes, made Logan want to punch a hole in the wall. Still, he knew he had to let her grow. "Don't screw this up," he told himself aloud. But Jackson's voice was right there waiting. "Then you better make sure she stays ours." Logan exhaled. It was going to be a long day. Logan's POV. I stood just outside the library, one hand braced on the polished mahogany doorframe, listening. Her voice floated to me, sweet and eager. "Z-U-R-I-I," she sounded out carefully. "Perfect," Elias said, his voice calm and encouraging. "That's exactly right." Zuria laughed, a delighted, soft sound that tightened something inside my chest. Jackson purred in my mind, practically tail-wagging. "She's learning fast. Look how happy she is. Goddess, I love hearing her laugh." I couldn't move. I was rooted there, listening to her joy as if it were the only melody that mattered. "I can't wait to learn more," she said next, and I heard the scribble of her pen. The way she spoke, it was like a new world had opened up for her, and I wasn't sure if I was happy or resentful it hadn't been me who gave her that joy. I clenched my jaw and slowly opened the door, stepping inside. They both looked up. Zuria's eyes brightened, though a flicker of concern passed through her expression. "Logan," she greeted. "I wanted to check on your progress," I said, my voice coming out lower than intended. Elias stood respectfully. "She's doing very well. She spelled her name just now, all on her own." I nodded, stepping closer. Zuria still had her notebook open, the letters large and a little wobbly. Zuria.my chest swelled with pride and something else, something raw. She looked up at me, beaming. "I spelled it right, Logan." "I did it." I cleared my throat. "You did. That's excellent." Jackson snorted inside my mind. "Go ahead. Tell her how proud you are. Or better yet, kiss her. Goddess, look at that smile. Don't just stand there like a damn statue." I sat in the empty chair across from her. "How are you liking your first lesson?" Her eyes sparkled. "I love it. Elias is very patient. And the library, it's like a dream." Jackson's mood soured instantly. Of course she loves him. Young, eager, smiling like sunshine. "Enough," I told him. But even I couldn't deny the pang in my chest. I wasn't prepared for how beautiful she'd be when she smiled. Or how much I'd crave being the reason for that light. Zuria turned back to her notebook, showing me the other letters she'd practiced. Her neat attempts at writing words like sun, wolf, and pack. "I want to read books one day," she said. "Real books. Maybe I'll read one to you." That hit me square in the gut. I studied her, truly studied her, and the rush of protectiveness that surged through me nearly overwhelmed my logic. And damn it, I had fallen for her. I watched her giggle with Elias again as he passed her another book. My fists curled slightly on the table. "We need to get back to the lessons, Alpha," Elias said playfully. "Right." I muttered that I stood, gave Zuria a short nod, and left before I embarrassed myself further. As I returned to my office, Jackson sighed. "You're in deep. Might as well stop pretending." I ran a hand through my hair and leaned against the door. "I know. And I meant it. I was in deep, all right. I'd fallen in love with her. And I had no idea what the hell to do about it." Maddox's POV. We arrived just as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in strokes of crimson and gold. But there was no beauty in the mission that brought us here. Our convoy of black SUVs barreled down the long gravel drive leading to Alpha Darian's estate like a storm. No announcement, no courtesy. We weren't here for diplomacy. I led the charge through the packhouse doors, Cade and Theron flanking me while Nicholas brought up the rear. The warriors remained outside, surrounding the perimeter. We didn't need all 50 of them for this, but their presence sent the message we intended. Shadow Fong wasn't asking. We were taking. The guards at Darian's estate made a pitiful attempt to intercept us, but one hard glare from Cade, and they stepped aside like grass before the wind. Weak, spineless, that I could feel Theron's disgust ripple off him in waves. We stormed down the hall like we owned the place. Our boots echoed against the marble floors, loud enough to wake the dead. We knew exactly where his bedroom was. I didn't knock. The door slammed open under my hand, and the sight inside was everything I expected. Darian jolted upright in bed, his hair disheveled, his face slack with sleep and confusion. Karen shrieked, scrambling for the sheets to cover her naked body. Darian shouted, "What the hell is the meaning of this?" I stepped inside slowly, savoring the moment. "Get dressed," I said calmly. "Meet us in your office. You've got 20 minutes. Cade grinned, eyes gleaming with malicious amusement. Theron chuckled, shaking his head at the pathetic sight before us. "You sure know how to wake up a household," he muttered. We turned and walked away, taking our time as if this was our estate. And for now it might as well be. 20 minutes later, Darian and Karen shuffled into the office. He was dressed in wrinkled slacks and a button-up. She wore a robe and tried to look composed, but her eyes flicked nervously between us. "Is there something you need?" Darian asked, trying to regain some semblance of authority. "Or is Zuria failing in her duties?" I scoffed. "We're not here about that." I leaned against the large desk, folding my arms. "We want information. About Zuria's mother." Karen's sneer twisted her face. Disdainful, dismissive. Darian's expression was bland. "She died when Zuria was a child. An omega. Not worth much, truth be told." I didn't move, just looked at Cade. He was beside Karen in a second, his massive hand wrapped around her throat, lifting her clean off the floor. She choked, feet kicking, eyes bulging. Darian shouted, "Stop this." "I told you." "Let me warn you," I said coldly. "No lies. For every lie, she loses something." Nicholas stepped forward, unrolling a leather pouch of blades onto the desk. The clink of metal against wood can be heard over Karen's attempt to breath, gasping for air. Theron picked up a long, slender knife, testing the edge with his thumb. Darian's eyes darted between us. "I'll tell you. Just stop." Cade didn't release her, he just loosened his grip enough for her to gasp. Darian swallowed hard. "Nima. That was her name. She came to us as a rogue. Claimed she'd lost her pack. I let her stay as a servant. She was quiet. Kept to herself. I narrowed my eyes. And we had an affair. She got pregnant. With Zuria." He paused. Karen wasn't pleased. "So after Naima gave birth, I let her stay long enough to wean the child. Then I sold her to Alpha Rodney." Theron stepped closer to Karen, blade gleaming. I clenched my jaw. "And you told Zuria her mother died." "She wouldn't stop crying for her," Darian said, lowering his head. "It was easier." I exploded. "You tore a mother from her child and called it easier?" Karen hissed from where Cade held her. "She was useless. Other than seducing my husband, what good was she?" "Wrong answer." Nicholas didn't hesitate. With swift precision, he sliced off her left ear. She screamed, thrashing, blood pouring down her neck. Darian recoiled. "Goddess, stop this." I glared at him. "You let your wife and daughter torture a child for years." "Why?" He hesitated, then whispered, "Because I wanted Karen to be happy." Theron spat on the floor. "You're a disgrace." I took a step forward. "You're going to retrieve Naima. You have 4 days. Bring her here. If you don't..." I gestured toward Karen, who was now sobbing, cradling the bleeding side of her face. "We'll finish what we started." "That's impossible," Darian argued. Nicholas moved again, point 2 of Karen's fingers hit the floor before she even screamed. "I said 4 days." Darian dropped to his knees beside her, his face pale. "Fine. I'll get her." I nodded. "We'll be staying. Make sure rooms are prepared." Through the mind link, Darian ordered his omegas to ready rooms for us and our guards. As we turned to leave, Theron said with a wicked grin, "And we're hungry. Breakfast better be on the table in an hour." Cade dropped Karen like a sack of meat. She crumpled to the floor, gasping and shaking. The floor was slick with her blood. None of us looked back. Shadow Fong didn't ask for justice. We delivered it. Darian's POV, the echo of footsteps thundered in my ears before I even fully woke. It was too early for anything formal, the sun barely cresting over the horizon, filtering weak light through the velvet curtains of our bedroom. Karen stirred beside me, mumbling in annoyance at the disruption. Then the door burst open without warning. Maddox! Behind him, the infamous brothers Cade, Nicholas, and Theron filed in like a silent storm. The sight of them standing tall and deadly in my bedroom, completely uninvited, made my stomach twist. My wolf growled low in warning, but I knew better than to pick a fight I couldn't win. These men were born of blood and fire, known for their brutality. If someone so much as whispered that the brothers had been dispatched, it sent shudders through any alpha's spine. Karen sat up, clutching the silk sheet to her chest. Her eyes were wide with panic, her breath shallow. "What is the meaning of this intrusion?" I demanded, forcing steel into my voice. Maddox's expression didn't change. Cold, sharp. "Get dressed. Meet us in your office in 20 minutes. They turned and left as casually as they had entered. No respect, no bow, no fear. I was furious, but I was also afraid. Karen stared at me, clutching the sheet tighter. "Darian, why are they here? Did something happen to Zuria?" I didn't answer right away. I suspected this had to do with the girl. But why now? Why dig up the past? 20 minutes later, we stood in my office, dressed, tense. Karen perched nervously near my desk. The brothers leaned against my furniture like they owned the place, and Maddox stood in the center, arms folded, unreadable. What is this about? If Zuria isn't fulfilling her duties, we can. Maddox cut me off with a raised hand. We're not here to discuss her duties. I want information about her mother. Karen flinched at the mention. I held my face steady. Naima? She died when Zuria was a toddler. There's not much to say. She was just an Omega servant. Lies. Half-truths. I saw Maddox's nostrils flare. He didn't believe me. Maddox turned his gaze to Karen, and Cade moved in a flash. His hand shot out and clamped around her throat. She gasped, legs kicking as he lifted her off the floor. Stop! I barked, stepping forward. What are you doing? Lie again, Maddox said evenly, and I let them peel her apart. Nicholas calmly unrolled a pouch of blades on my desk. Theron took one and approached Karen, whose face was turning red as she clawed at Cade's grip. I'll talk, I shouted. Cade loosened his hold. Karen wheezed but was still suspended midair. Naima, I began, my voice shaking, was a rogue. She came to us with nothing. I let her stay as a servant. We had an affair. She got pregnant. With Zuria. Maddox's face remained stone. She was a complication, I went on. Karen hated her. Their presence together caused problems. After Zuria was born, I let Naima stay to care for her. But eventually I sold her to Alpha Rodney. Karen hissed from Cade's grip. She wanted to scream at me. Why tell Zuria her mother was dead? Maddox asked. Because she kept crying for her. Every night, every hour. It was easier to say she was gone. You ripped her heart out, Maddox said coldly. And then let your wife and daughter torment her. Karen snapped, voice hoarse. She's lying. I never laid a hand on her. Theron raised his knife. Maddox looked to me. Did you intervene? I swallowed. No. I wanted Karen to be happy. The sound of Karen's scream tore through the room as Nicholas sliced off her ear. I lunged forward, but Theron blocked me, pushing me back effortlessly. You have 4 days to get Naima back from Alpha Rodney, Maddox said. Or you'll both bleed for real. That's impossible, I argued. Karen screamed again as Nicholas took 2 of her fingers. You have 4 days, Maddox repeated. Prepare rooms for us. We're staying. Karen collapsed on the floor, sobbing. I dropped beside her, cradling her ruined hand, numb with shock and shame. They turned to leave. We're hungry, Theron said casually. Have breakfast ready in an hour. And just like that, they walked out. I remained on the floor beside my wife, breathing heavy, the taste of blood thick in the air. Naima. I hadn't thought of her in years. Goddess help me. Zuria was about to learn the truth. Karen's POV. I couldn't stop shaking. Even after Darian helped me to our bedchamber and pressed a towel against the bloody mess where 2 of my fingers used to be, my hands trembled uncontrollably. That bastard Nicholas had sliced them off like it was nothing, like I was nothing. Shadowfang. Just the name had always made my skin crawl. But now I understood why people whispered it like a curse. Now I knew the true meaning of fear. They didn't come like emissaries. They didn't announce themselves like allies or dignitaries. No, they barged in with steel eyes and bloodlust in their teeth, walking through our halls like they owned them, like they could do whatever they wanted. And the worst part, they could. Maddox, that smug, unshakable brute. And those damn gammas of his. Monsters in flesh. I had heard stories, everyone had. About how they enjoyed pain the way some enjoyed wine or music. About how no one survived once the brothers decided you were prey. And now they are here. And it was all because of her. Zuria. That little wretched mistake. I thought I had buried the past well enough. Beaten it into her so deep she wouldn't dare speak it. But apparently, I underestimated the bitch. She must have told them everything. I didn't know how or when, but she must have. It's the only reason Maddox would show up here, demanding information about Naima. Naima. Even hearing that name made my stomach turn. I had tried to erase her from memory, from existence. That filthy, low-born Omega who wormed her way into my mate's bed, into my house, and bore that cursed child. Her presence was an insult. Her child, a permanent stain on my marriage. And Darian let it happen. I had to make her life a living hell. I had to remind her of her place. As Zuria grew older, when she started looking too much like her whore of a mother, I made sure she understood what she was. Nothing. A blemish. So why now? Why, after all these years, did they want her? What was so important about that woman? I winced as another pulse of pain throbbed through my mangled hand. My fingers were gone. Darian was too spineless to do anything but wring his hands and make promises he couldn't keep. I couldn't wait 4 days to find out what Shadowfang wanted. I needed to know what they were planning, what they knew, what they wanted with Naima. Because if they dragged that woman back here, if they paraded her into this house, everything could fall apart. No, I needed answers. I sat up, cradling my bandaged hand, and rang the bell for my personal Omega. Mariel entered moments later, her eyes immediately falling to the bloody gauze and the tension in my jaw. "Luna Karen?" she asked softly. I leaned forward, eyes sharp. "There's something I need you to do." She hesitated. "Of course." I pointed toward the window. "You saw the ones who came with the Shadowfang envoy." "Yes, my lady. Their warriors are intimidating. They're monsters," I snapped. "But monsters can be tamed for the right price." Mariel looked unsure. "I want you to find one of the guards," I said slowly, biting down the pain. "One of the younger ones. The ones who look like they still have a cock they can't control." She blanched. "My lady, you will smile. Flirt. Offer what you need to offer. And you will get information. Why they're really here. What do they want with Naima? What Zuria told them. Get any information you can." Mariel paled further. I don't know if you will," I hissed. "If you want to keep your place here. If you don't want to end up in the streets with no pack. Rogue." She swallowed hard and nodded. "Go," I said coldly. Mariel turned and left, closing the door softly behind her. I sat back against the pillows and exhaled a slow breath. Pain still burned in my hand, and my pride was in shreds. But if we were going to survive this, I had to be smart. Shadowfang may think they have all the power. Little did they know I wasn't done yet. And if Naima returned, well, she wouldn't stay breathing for long. Maddox's POV. The dining hall was filled with the scent of roasted meats, warm bread, and the heavy tension of war wolves breaking their fast. I sat at the head of the table, tearing into a thick slab of venison, while Theron devoured a blood sausage with the same gleeful precision he used on the battlefield. Cade barely looked up as he finished his 3rd helping of eggs. The silence between us was companionable, the calm before the storm we all knew would break before long. The door burst open. One of our warriors dragged an Omega girl by her hair across the polished floors of Alpha Darian's estate. She whimpered, scrambling to ease the pull on her scalp, but the warrior didn't relent until they reached the end of the hall. He threw her at my feet. The girl landed hard on her knees, dress rumpled and face streaked with tears. Theron didn't even blink. "You owe me $100, he muttered to Cade without looking up from his food. Cade smirked. "Told you she'd try something before nightfall." Theron cursed under his breath. "That bitch cost me $100. She'll pay for it with another piece of herself." I didn't speak, I didn't even look at the Omega, who knelt there pleading between ragged breaths. "Please," she begged, her voice trembling. "It was a misunderstanding. I didn't mean anything by it. I cut a slice of meat and popped it into my mouth, chewing slowly. Let the silence hang. Let her sweat." Behind us, the doors opened again. Bandaged and pale, Karen stumbled in, clutching the edges of her robe like some wounded queen. Darian followed behind her, looking sleep-deprived and utterly defeated. "What is the meaning of this?" Karen shrieked. "Why is my Omega on the floor?" I still didn't look at her. Instead, I dipped a piece of bread into the pool of gravy on my plate. "What is going on?" she barked louder. Theron leaned back in his chair and fixed her with a grin sharp enough to wound. "You cost me $100. You should have waited till nightfall, Karen." Her face went ashen. I don't understand," she stammered, looking from me to the brothers. "I don't know what she did. She tried to seduce one of our guards," Cade finally said, voice ice. "Thought we wouldn't notice." "That's not true," the Omega screamed. "She made me do it. Luna Karen told me to." Karen's eyes widened. "Lies. I did no such thing. This is a setup." The dining hall was silent, save for the scrape of Theron's knife against his plate. We finished our food while Mariel knelt on the cold floor, her sobs turning to silent trembles. Karen and Darian stood frozen, as if even breathing wrong might cost them their lives. I wiped my mouth with a cloth napkin and finally looked at Cade. He rose without a word, walked around the table, and stopped in front of the Omega. Mariel looked up with watery eyes. "Please no." Cade drew a short, thin blade from his belt and in one clean movement slit her throat. The sound was wet, her body slumped to the floor, blood pooling beneath her. Karen let out a scream so loud it echoed through the stone halls. Darian gasped. I stood slowly and turned to Karen. If you want to lose every member of your staff, I said, my voice calm, cold, and without mercy, then by all means try that shit again. Karen dropped to her knees, sobbing hysterically. The sound grated on my nerves. Her body trembled, and then she fainted. Darian turned to one of his guards. Take her to our chambers. Now. The guard obeyed, lifting her limp form in his arms. Darian turned back to me, face pale and drawn. I've sent several of my fastest men to Alpha Rodney's pack to retrieve Naima. I didn't move. That information doesn't concern me. Darian blinked. What? The only thing that matters is that Naima is here in 4 days, I said. How you make that happen is irrelevant to me. He swallowed hard, hands clenched at his sides. Why? Why do you even want her? What's so special about Naima? Why is she important to Shadowfang? I stared him down, saying nothing. Behind me, Theron chuckled. Does the business of Shadowfang concern you now, Darian? Darian shook his head slowly, lips pale and trembling. No, of course not. Good, I said. Then get it done. For days. He nodded once. The brothers and I rose as one and left the dining hall without another word, leaving the bloodied floor and the broken Omega. Naima's POV, the air in Alpha Rodney's estate had shifted. There were whispers, low and sharp, curling through servant quarters like smoke. My name was being spoken again, not in anger, not in command, but in confusion. And fear. Alpha Darian sent for her. One of the kitchen girls whispered late the night before. He wants Naima back. My chest had hollowed out the moment I heard it. I dropped the stack of folded linen I was carrying, my knees weak beneath me. Why now? Why, after all these years of silence? Alpha Rodney had bought me from Alpha Darian to settle a debt, one of many, I suspected. I was nothing more than currency passed between alphas. A servant.an Omega.an old stain they wanted to scrub away. But now Alpha Darian wanted me back. Why? Did he or Karen know? Had they discovered the truth? Or worse, was the bounty the reason? I had long suspected someone somewhere would alert the bounty hunters. I had kept my head down. I never ventured beyond the kitchens, the laundry, the cellar. I never looked Marissa in the eye when I passed her, and I certainly never let her get a close look at me. As far as I knew, she hadn't recognized me. But that might not last. Alpha Rodney summoned me just after sunset. His chambers were dimly lit, the scent of aged leather, smoke, and arrogance hanging in the air. He lounged on a couch like a king in a den of sin, his beta, Arlo, standing stiffly beside him. Naima, Alpha Rodney drawled, eyeing me like a butcher sizing up a slab of meat. Alpha Darian wants you back. I wonder why. I bowed my head. I am yours to command, Alpha. I don't know why he would, Alpha. Don't feed me that submissive garbage, he snapped. Why the hell does Darian want you back? I kept my voice steady. I was once a servant in his household. Perhaps he misses my hand at the laundry. Alpha Rodney scoffed. You expect me to believe that? Alpha Darian has a pack full of Omegas to scrub his sheets. Why would he want an old one returned? I do not know, Alpha. Alpha Rodney leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. You got a connection to him? I shook my head. No, Alpha. I was nothing. I am nothing. Beta Arlo interjected. He didn't request Marissa. That's what bothers me. Why the servant? Not the daughter? Unless this woman knows something. What's special about you? Alpha Rodney grunted. He never even asked about Marissa. All he said was send Naima. Like he owned her. Like I hadn't paid for her already. I swallowed my terror that I had always known Alpha Rodney's pride was the most dangerous thing in this house. Alpha Darian should have known better than to tug on it. Alpha Rodney stood, his voice venom. You tell me now or I get the whip. I lowered myself to the floor. I swear to you, Alpha, I know nothing. I am merely a servant. I have served here at the Silver Pine Pack for years with no incident. I truly don't know why after all these years Alpha Darian is requesting my return. He stared at me a long while, then finally turned to Arlo. Keep her out of sight. If Marissa gets wind of this, it'll be a mess. Yes, Alpha. Alpha Rodney stormed off, fury in his wake. I knelt there a few moments longer, heart pounding, thoughts spinning. Back in the servant quarters, I barely made it to my cot before I collapsed onto it. My secret was unraveling. The one I swore to protect. The one I gave up everything to hide. They must have discovered something. Maybe she shifted. Maybe Karen, goddess, maybe Karen knows something. And if they're calling me back because they know, then my time is running out. I closed my eyes and prayed to the moon goddess that Zuria and my family were safe. Alpha Rodney's POV, the call connected after the third ring. Rodney, Alpha Darian greeted me, his voice tight with poorly masked desperation. To what do I owe the pleasure? I said, already knowing. I need to buy back the omega you acquired from me. Nima. I chuckled. You mean the one you threw away like trash a decade ago? What for? You've got your daughter here already. There was a pause. It's important. I'll pay you whatever she's worth. I doubt that, I replied smoothly. But I'm a generous man. I'll return her for double the price you paid. Silence stretched over the line. Double, he snapped. I don't have that kind of money. Not my problem, Darian. You want her, that's the cost. No negotiation. She was just a servant. Apparently not, I said, voice like velvet over steel. You've made her more valuable by crawling back for her. That's the price now. You've got 24 hours to transfer the funds. That much will bankrupt me. Then I suggest you take out a loan. Another pause, then bitterly. You'll have the money within the day. I ended the call without a goodbye, then leaned back in my chair, chuckling darkly. He was sweating, which meant I was right, something was off. No Omega servant was worth that kind of desperation unless she had something on him. Or carried something far more valuable than anyone knew. Arlo, I said, turning to my beta. Yes, Alpha. You're to escort her back to Darian when the time comes. Stay sharp. Watch everything. Something's rotten here, and I want to know what. I'll find out. And Arlo, I added, if that bastard's planning anything. If he's hiding something. We'll know. I stood and crossed to the window, staring out across my estate. I've never liked Darian. Slippery bastard. A coward in a crown. If he's playing some long game, it won't end well for him. Arlo smirked. You think it's about the girl? No Omega is worth that much coin and stress. Not unless she's something more. Like what? That's what you're going to find out. Because no matter what Darian was hiding, no matter what secret Naima carried, I would learn the truth. And I'd make damn sure I profited from it. Marissa's POV, something was wrong. Terribly, inexplicably wrong. The servants had been whispering again, more than usual. Their mouths moved faster than their brooms, their glances darting between shadows and doorways. I caught the words Omega, return, and Alpha Darian more than once, though none would dare say it outright in front of me. But I wasn't a fool. Someone from my father's past was here, and being summoned back. And I needed to know who. But of course, I couldn't just ask. Not him anyway. Alpha Rodney didn't like questions. The last time I dared ask why another she-wolf was sneaking out of his chambers at dawn, I spent the night tending bruises the size of fists. I still remembered the way his eyes had burned with rage, like my curiosity offended him more than his own infidelity. He still hasn't marked me. Not even after declaring me his. Not even after making me leave my pack and come here, abandoning everything I knew. So what was I? Certainly not Luna. Just another conquest, a trophy. 2 other women, both Omegas, both beneath me in rank, were also regular guests in his bed. I knew one of them was pregnant. I'd overheard the doctor himself confirm it. I was nothing. Not marked. Barely acknowledged, only when he summoned me to his bed. The only thing Alpha Rodney respected was silence. Obedience. Beauty when it served him. He kept my movements restricted, under the guise of security. No calls to my parents. No unsupervised walks past the pack grounds. My phone was monitored. My wardrobe was filtered. I was his prisoner in silk, which meant I couldn't reach out to my father or mother to ask what was going on. I couldn't demand to know why someone from our pack had been sent here and was now being called back. So I did the next best thing. I turned to the weakest links in the chain, the Omegas. I stalked the lower quarters that afternoon, my heels clicking across the stone like warning shots. Servants scurried away at the sound, but a few weren't fast enough. The first was a kitchen girl, blonde, slender, too slow to bow. Who's being sent back to Alpha Darian? I asked, voice like velvet wrapped around a blade. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened, but no words came. I won't ask again. I don't know, Miss Marissa. I only overheard. Slap. My hand connected with her cheek before she finished the sentence. I said I won't ask again. That means don't waste my time. She crumpled to the floor, holding her face. The other Omegas nearby dropped their heads, refusing to meet my gaze. Cowards. I turned my eyes to another, this one older, wiser, with gray streaking her temples. You. She hesitated. I'm sure you're not stupid. Speak. I don't know her name, Miss Marissa, the woman said calmly, her tone laced with just enough reverence to avoid suspicion. Just that someone's leaving. But none of us know who. No one's told us anything. Liar. I could see it in her eyes, the subtle shift, the practiced stillness. She knew exactly who it was, She was protecting her. Protecting her identity. I straightened slowly, hiding my irritation behind a sneer. Keep your mouth shut. If I find out someone's been keeping information from me. The threat hung in the air like poison. And then I was gone, heels clicking again, echoing down the corridor as I began my own search. If they wouldn't tell me who she was, I would find her myself. I stormed through the pack house, searching every corridor, every servant's wing, even the gardens. Yet somehow, this mysterious Omega kept slipping through my fingers. She was clever, I'd give her that. I passed one of the guards who gave me a slight nod, then turned his eyes away quickly. Suspicious. Noima's POV, the whispers had become louder. No longer just faint rumors but full-blown speculation, and now confirmation. Beta Arlo came to my room just after dawn, knocking once before stepping inside. His face was unreadable as always, cold and efficient. I had just pulled my shawl over my shoulders, and the moment I saw his expression, my stomach dropped. "Naima," he said, his voice clipped. "An agreement has been made. You'll be returning to Alpha Darian's territory in 2 days. Be ready." Just like that. No explanation. No emotion. No questions. I stood frozen for a moment, the words rattling around in my head like stones in a tin can. Return. After all this time? I nodded once and closed the door behind him. As soon as he was gone, I slumped to the edge of the bed, burying my face in my hands. My breath caught in my throat, panic rising. What did Darian want with me? Did the bounty hunters finally find me? I had always feared that someone somewhere would uncover my secret. I sank onto the edge of my bed, staring at the worn floor beneath my feet. My chest was tight, as if the air had thickened around me, too heavy to breathe in. Fear curled inside me like a cold serpent, coiling around my spine. My first instinct was to run. Pack nothing. Slip away in the dead of night, past the eastern wall where the guards were always more relaxed and the fog from the marsh provided some cover. I'd done it before, disappeared, survived. The next day, I went about my chores as usual, despite the whirlwind in my chest. The servants had already started talking. The rumors were flying. Some believed I was on a temporary contract and simply being recalled. Others whispered I was too old, too useless, and Alpha Rodney no longer wanted to waste resources on me. They had no idea. Still, it was impossible to escape the stares, the speculation. I heard my name, half-whispered, half-hissed between cracked doors and behind linen screens. I did my best to ignore it all, until the whispers reached Marissa. I didn't see her, not at first. But I heard her wrath, her voice, her storming footsteps as she stomped through the pack house, demanding answers from anyone who dared cross her path. One of the older kitchen Omegas, Lena, had been my friend for years. She knew everything. And when Marissa cornered her in the kitchen wing, Lena lied beautifully. "I don't know her name," she said, head slightly bowed. "Just that someone's leaving. None of us know who." Perfect. Thanks to Lena and a few others like her, I was able to stay ahead. I altered my cleaning schedule. Took side halls instead of the main corridors. Ate in silence at odd hours, and kept to the servants' quarters where Marissa rarely dared to tread. But that didn't stop her. She tore through the estate like a hunting hound, scouring rooms and growling threats. I could feel her fury through the walls. Every time she passed nearby, my pulse would quicken. She was getting closer. But not close enough. Not until the morning of my departure. I'd packed my meager belongings in a single worn satchel. I wore my hair tied back, no makeup, no adornments. I didn't want to look special. I didn't want to be remembered. But fate had other plans. As I stepped out of the servants' wing into the front corridor, a figure stood at the main entrance. Marissa. Her gaze locked on me instantly. Her eyes narrowed and her jaw clenched, but she didn't say a word. She stared at me for what felt like an eternity. I watched her eyes scan my face, flicker over my form, and somewhere in that twisted brain of hers a memory stirred. She recognized me. Vaguely. But not enough. Confusion warred with anger on her face. She knew she should know me. She just couldn't place it. And thank the moon goddess for that. I didn't speak. I didn't flinch. I simply kept walking, never meeting her eyes again. Beta Arlo waited by the black SUV. He opened the back door without a word. I slid inside, clutching my satchel to my lap. He got in beside me. We didn't speak. Not for the entire ride. I kept my face blank, emotionless. Even when I could feel his eyes on me. Even when his wolf was no doubt listening for my heartbeat. Even when dread coiled in my stomach like a snake. The drive to Alpha Darian's territory was long, quiet, and heavy with tension. But I wouldn't let myself unravel. Whatever waited for me there, I had to face it, and pray it wasn't the truth they wanted. Because the truth would destroy everything. Beta Arlo's POV. It was mid-afternoon when we pulled through the wrought iron gates of Alpha Darian's estate. The guards recognized our vehicle and quickly waved us through. I sat rigid in my seat, watching Naima from the corner of my eye. She had not spoken a word the entire journey. She kept her eyes on the road or folded her hands neatly on her lap, her expression unreadable. Damn good at hiding emotions, this one. I escorted her to the main pack house, through the familiar stone archways, and into the heart of the estate. When we reached Darian's office, I knocked once and opened the door. What I saw nearly made me halt. Luna Karen, sat on a couch near the window, her head turned slightly. One ear was gone, bandaged, her left hand wrapped in thick gauze. A couple of fingers missing. I stared. "What the hell happened to you?" I asked, genuinely surprised. Karen shot me a sharp look, but forced a calm tone. "Accident during a hunting tournament." Bullshit. Her lie was too clean, too rehearsed, and the look she gave Naima as we stepped into the room? Pure, blistering hatred. Before I could question her further, Darian stood from behind his desk. "Omegas will bring you food and drink shortly, Beta Arlo. Thank you for the escort. Another Omega will show Naima to her quarters." I frowned. "You're not even going to tell me why she was recalled." "It's private pack business," Darian said flatly. I didn't like it. None of it. As I walked with Darian and Karen to the dining hall, my senses flared. The moment we stepped inside, I stopped dead. Maddox, Beta fucking Maddox. And the brothers, his psychotic gammas. They were seated, waiting. Their calm demeanors only made the hairs on my neck rise. I turned sharply toward Darian. "What's the meaning of this? What are Shadowfang enforcers doing here?" Darian gave a slick smile. "They're my esteemed guests." Maddox's smug stare locked onto me. He didn't even blink. I turned back to him. "Since when did Shadowfang become esteemed guests?" He didn't respond, didn't flinch. Just looked through me like I didn't exist. He turned instead to Darian. "Is she here?" Darian nodded nervously. I was fuming. "Answer me, damn it." Theron and Nicholas stood from the table. The menace in their movements silenced the room. Karen suddenly stood and raised her hands. "Our guests are on a tight schedule. They just want to return quickly." An Omega was summoned to bring Naima, with all of her belongings. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't right. This wasn't normal. Moments later, Naima stepped into the dining hall. And the air grew heavier. Something was happening here. Something Darian was hiding. And I intended to find out what it was. When Naima stepped into the room, the shift in atmosphere was immediate. Maddox's chair scraped against the marble floor as he stood slowly, like a predator stalking prey. The brothers didn't move, but their eyes sharpened. Theron's fingers tapped a rhythmless beat on the wooden table, and Nicholas leaned forward ever so slightly, his nostrils flaring as though scenting the room for deceit. Cade never looked away from Naima. Naima stood frozen just inside the doorway. Her hands were clasped together in front of her, her chin tilted downward. Submissive but not broken. It was the quiet power in her silence that made me pay closer attention. There was no fear in her eyes. The same eyes like Zuria. Maddox stepped toward her, pausing halfway across the dining hall. "You're Naima," he said simply, but his voice held the weight of 1,000 unspoken demands. She nodded once. "Yes." He looked her over, not with desire but with curiosity. As if she was a puzzle piece he'd finally found after years of searching. Theron chuckled darkly from behind him. "So now that we have what we came for," he said to no one in particular. "We'll be on our way." Naima didn't flinch. She simply met Theron's gaze, then looked away unshaken. "Smart." Karen was fuming now, her lips trembling with words she dared not say. Darian kept his jaw tight, clearly trying to control the situation he no longer had any hold over. I stepped closer to Darian, lowering my voice. "You want to tell me what the hell is going on? Why does Shadowfang want her? What's so special about this Omega?" Darian didn't meet my eyes. "Coward." Maddox turned back toward us. "We'll be leaving shortly," he announced, cutting through the thick silence. "Have her belongings loaded into our convoy." "No." The voice was soft, but it turned every head. "Naima." She was staring directly at Maddox now. "I need one thing first." Maddox's brow arched, amused. "And what's that?" She glanced toward me, then Karen, then back to Maddox. "Answers." Maddox didn't reply at first, he looked at her in silence, something calculating flickering in his expression. Then finally he nodded once. "You'll get them. But not here." Karen stepped forward, barely able to contain herself. "We all need answers." She's a. Finish that sentence, Cade growled, eyes glowing faintly. And I'll take the other ear. Karen shrank back, pale as ash. Maddox turned to Darian. We leave in 10. I expect no delays. Darian gave a tight nod. I looked at Naima. She didn't look at me. Just kept her eyes forward, as if already facing whatever storm lay ahead. Something wasn't right. And I would be damned if I didn't figure out what role I had just unknowingly played in handing over an unknown Omega to Shadowfang. Naima's POV, it was nearing dusk when we arrived at Shadowfang Pact territory. The gates were wide and the estate loomed over the road like a fortress, yet there was something tranquil about it. The trees rustled with the breeze and the scent of pine and earth clung to the air. Beta Maddox personally escorted me from the vehicle, saying little other than, "You'll be safe here." I believed him, despite the lingering tightness in my chest. The room they gave me was nothing short of beautiful. A modest suite tucked near the east wing of the pack house. The walls were a soft stone, a pale gray that caught the warmth of the fading sunlight. The bed was large and clean, the mattress plush. Thick wool blankets and a pillow that cradled my head when I sat on the edge and tested its softness. There was a wardrobe with fresh clothing, folded and smelling faintly of lavender. A small table in the corner held a candle, a carafe of water, and a covered plate of food just in case I hadn't yet eaten. But Beta Maddox hadn't left me to dine alone. He encouraged me to join the other Omegas for dinner in the Central Pack dining hall. Nervously, I accepted. The dining area was far grander than anything I'd ever been allowed to enter before. A long table stretched across the room, lit by golden sconces and a roaring hearth on the far wall. Omegas of various ages and ranks were seated, chatting softly among themselves. When I entered, several of them smiled politely and made space for me. It wasn't the cold welcome I expected. I sat, slowly at first, unsure of my place. But the warmth in their greetings slowly soothed the unease knotting in my chest. A younger Omega passed me a bowl of stew, another handed me warm bread. One even poured my drink without hesitation. There were no sneers, no side-glances, no whispered rumors. Just kindness. Later that evening, I returned to my room to unpack. I had so little, just my satchel and a couple of threadbare dresses, and a small tin of cocoa butter. I still didn't know why I was here, or what the Shadowfang Pack wanted from me. But I knew one thing for certain. This was the first place that had ever felt like the beginning of safety. And for now, that would be enough. Maddox's POV, we arrived at the Shadowfang estate just before sunset. The skies had begun to dim into bruised streaks of lavender and gold, casting long shadows across the gravel path that led to the main house. Naima sat beside me, her posture rigid, eyes forward. She hadn't asked another question since we left Darian's territory, but I could smell her fear, her confusion. The silence between us was thick and unsettling. When we finally pulled into the circular driveway of the pack house, a few guards opened the doors. I stepped out first and motioned for Naima to follow. Her hesitation was brief but noticeable. "You'll be safe here," I told her quietly. "That's all you need to know for now." She didn't respond, but I could feel her thoughts churning beneath her calm surface. I turned to Naima. "One of the Omegas will show you to your quarters. You'll be treated with respect here, but don't leave your room without permission until Alpha Logan speaks with you directly." She gave the smallest nod before being guided away by Omega Natalia. Once she disappeared into the pack house, the brothers and I got back in the SUV to continue to the Alpha's house. Logan was already waiting at the front door. As planned, he gave me a slight nod. The brothers slipped inside, their usual heavy-footed calm returning to them after the tense journey. Walking to Logan's office. "Any trouble?" he asked. "Not directly. But Beta Arlo arrived with her from the Silver Pine Pack. I'm sure he's going to interrogate Alpha Darian." Logan's jaw clenched. "Does he know who she is?" "No. But if they keep poking around, they might. It's a ticking clock now." He nodded grimly. "Then we make our move before they figure out what they gave up." Before either of us could say another word, a knock came at the office door. "Zuria." She poked her head in with a radiant smile, eyes gleaming like polished jades. "You're back." She pushed the door fully open and stepped in, practically bouncing with excitement. Cade grinned wide and leaned back in his chair. "We missed you, Cocoa Butter." Zuria chuckled sheepishly, the nickname making her cheeks warm. "It was quiet without you guys here. I didn't realize how much until just now." Nicholas stood and stretched lazily. "Hope you're joining us for dinner tonight. I need someone to talk to besides these three psychopaths." Zuria smiled and nodded. "Absolutely. I was actually going to get ready for it now." She turned toward me with a beaming smile. Thank you for the tutor, Beta Maddox. Elias is so kind and patient. I'm learning fast. That warmed something in me. Good, I said, nodding. Tell me everything you've learned over dinner. I will, she said brightly. I even wrote my name 3 times today without messing it up. The pride in her voice was innocent. Pure.it made me realize how much joy exuded. She turned, waving over her shoulder. Let me go change. And I want to bring my notebook. The moment she vanished behind the closed door, the room shifted again. Logan let out a low exhale. We need to tell Naima the truth. Soon. I nodded. Tomorrow. Because tonight, Zuria deserved one more evening of happiness. Zuria's POV, I smelled them before I saw them. That familiar cocktail of earth, spice, and the hint of something wild shadow fong. My heart leapt in my chest as I raced down the hallway toward Logan's office. I nearly collided with Mira on the way. Maddox and the brothers just arrived, she told me with a knowing smile. I didn't even try to hide my grin. I threw open the office door when Logan said to enter after I knocked, and there they were. Beta Maddox. I beamed. He looked up from the corner of the room, his arms crossed, the familiar scowl briefly replaced with a warm expression. There's our cocoa butter girl, Cade teased with a grin, his voice rough like gravel but oddly affectionate. You've got the whole house smelling like comfort. I chuckled. The house was quiet without you guys here. I kind of missed you guys, I admitted. Nicholas nodded. You better. I look forward to seeing what you've learned over dinner. I brightened at that. Oh, I brought my notebook. I've been learning how to spell my name perfectly. Maddox's eyes softened. Then dinner's the perfect time to tell us all about it. I gave Logan a shy smile that he'd been watching me quietly, and I could tell he was trying to rein in whatever storm was stirring beneath his cool alpha demeanor. I'll let you all catch up. I should go wash up and get my notes. I waved and turned to leave, my heart warm from the reunion. Logan's POV, the morning light streamed through the tall windows of the Alpha House's dining hall, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. The scent of maple syrup, roasted meats, and cinnamon filled the air as the Omegas laid out breakfast. Zuria sat at the end of the long table, her hair wild from sleep, cheeks puffed as she stuffed a huge bite of pancake into her mouth. I caught myself smiling. Damn, she was adorable when she didn't even try to be. I cleared my throat and leaned forward, catching her attention. Zuria, I said casually. Me and the fellas have to take care of some things on the pack grounds today. Might be gone most of the day. She paused mid-chew, blinking at me like a doe caught in the light, then nodded. Okay, she mumbled, her words muffled by the pancake in her mouth. I stifled a chuckle. After your studies with Elias, if we're not back by then, just stay here with Marta, all right? Got it, she replied, now chasing a piece of sausage around her plate. I didn't want her wandering around the grounds, especially not with the amount of work Maddox and I had to do behind the scenes. Naima's presence changed things. And until we figured out the whole picture, Zuria needed to stay safe. I opened the mind link. Marta, Mira, Alara. Yes, Alpha. All 3 responded in perfect sync. Keep Zuria at the Alpha House today. No visits to the orphanage. No strolls outside the grounds. She stays indoors until I return. That's an order. Understood, they replied without hesitation. Just as I ended the link, a ping nudged my thoughts. Natalia to Alpha Logan, the Omega assigned to Naima. Go ahead. Naima is awake. She's in the kitchen at the pack house, getting ready to sit down for breakfast. We'll be there in 10, I replied, already rising from my seat. Zuria gave me a soft smile as I stood, syrup still glistening on her lips. Jackson rumbled in the back of my head, that familiar warmth rising again. You sure you don't want to kiss her goodbye, or lick that syrup off her lips? He teased. I rolled my eyes and sent him a mental shove. Not now. Maddox was waiting for me by the front door with Theron, Nicholas, and Cade already geared up and alert. We moved silently, purposefully, across the estate and made our way to the pack house. The air was crisp, the pine scent sharp as we moved through the path. We didn't head to the main hall. Instead, I had a spare office in the east wing cleared and prepped. I didn't want Naima anywhere near Zuria yet, not until we understood the full story. When we arrived, Naima was finishing the last of her food at the kitchen's far end. She looked tired, but rested. On alert, but not terrified. Maddox nodded to one of the guards. Escort her to the east wing office. When she's done eating. As we waited, I glanced at Maddox. His jaw was tight. Even he didn't know everything yet. But today, that would change. We'd get the truth.